What's going on, everyone? Welcome into the Fantasy Pros Dynasty Football Podcast presented by Reality Sports Online. My name is Kyle Yates, and I am joined, as always, by Trevor Sikkema, the man who has not stopped celebrating for the past week. Trevor, congratulations on another championship. This has got to be getting old for you, right?
Yeah, you actually can't see my camera right now, so I'm just going to tell you that I am currently on a jet ski on the Tampa Bay Lightning's boat audio parade while we're doing this podcast. Yeah, I know. Technology, it's amazing, man.
I gotta say. No wind whatsoever. That's really, really impressive. Yeah, man. Hell of a week for you and hell of a year. I mean, Tampa Bay, back-to-back, you had the Buccaneers win that in, oh my word, I just can't even imagine. Well, Trevor, before we get into the content for today's show, I gotta ask you a question, man. Name something that is slower than our Dynasty startup draft right now. This is agonizing. This is so bad.
I would say the slowest, most low-cooked brisket of all time would still absolutely shatter our Dynasty pace right now. The most cooked through baked potato in a conventional oven is also up there for the running. But yeah, look, I love this Dynasty League that we're in. We're going to be talking about it, I know, on this podcast throughout the year because it's going to be a lot of fun. There are going to be a lot of heated words between the two of us. But I do have to say that this startup draft all weekend, we started on a Friday, and I was just like, pick. Come on, egg, because it's a startup and it's very exciting. But, you know, we'll get there eventually.
Yeah, I mean, I set 8-hour timers. So like, cause we've got people that are on TV and that and doing podcasts. All of us are doing podcasts and so it's just, we needed that time, but man, it's dragging. I've started this on Friday evening. We're now into the third round. And so come on.
We gotta pick up the pace, people.
We're going to be still doing this draft by the start of the 2022 season. I feel like, so a year and a half.
It'll just go right into the rookie draft next year. So
there we go.
Well, you know what? It'll be all smooth. It'll be a good
transition. It's all intentional.
Right.
All right. Hey, before we get into some fun game that we got here today, to some Dynasty this or that, I want to remind everyone about this giveaway that we've got going on, courtesy of our friends at Pristine Auction. You guys got to head over to get this Cam Akers signed helmet. Go over to Apple Podcasts or CastBox, leave a review for this show, then head over to fantasypros.com/dynasty contest. Fill out the short form that we've got there, attach a screenshot of your review to be entered. If you are also a subscriber to our YouTube channel at youtube.com/fantasypros, you get an additional 3 entries into this giveaway. So make sure that you are subscribed over there. We've got a ton of content. You can watch Trevor and I over there as well. Watch this podcast. We've also got some short form videos that have been coming out. I just did a top 10 breakout players for 2021. Tags did his must-have players. Those are like 8-minute, 6-minute videos. You got to head over and watch that. If you can't sit down and watch a full hour-long podcast or anything like that, make sure that you at least see that over on our youtube.com/fantasypros YouTube channel. All right. So, Trevor, what we're going to do here is this, we've got some players here that are in our ECR rankings, which stands for Expert Consensus Rankings, or Dynasty Rankings here. Mm-hmm. So what we do is we take the rankings of every expert, or not every expert, experts across the industry. We bring those rankings together and we give you the average here. So I went through and I prepared a long list of names here, and what we are going of players that are grouped together. So what we're going to do is I'm going to highlight a few players here, and you have to choose which one of these guys that you would be most willing to draft. Really? This is just a ploy on my part to see which players you are wanting to draft in our startup draft, so that way I can get them on the turn before it comes back to you. So
you pick right after me, don't? No, you're not right after me.
I'm a couple picks.
Out of 12 people, I pick 7th. You're 9, though. Yeah. So it's like if we're coming back around the turn, you could snipe anybody who's falling down the board. So this is actually very true.
For sure. I did not think about it when I was doing this, to be honest, but actually this is really smart on my part.
Oh,
so I'm just
yeah,
ride
of course.
With it. All right, here we go.
Yeah.
So looking at some players that are close together or right next to one another in our ECR rankings, let's dive right in here. So first player's up here. It's a tough decision that you have to make right at the top of your drafts. Okay. That is Saquon Barkley as the RB2 in Dynasty rankings, and Dalvin Cook is the RB3. If you are on the clock here, which one of these players would you be taking? Would you be rolling the dice here with arguably one of the most talented running back in all of football with Saquon Barkley, generational talent, or Dalvin Cook and the ridiculous workload that he gets plus the production?
Yeah, I think I'm going with Dalvin Cook here. And, you're splitting hairs between guys that could lead the league in fantasy points for a running back every single year, right? And so anytime you're even in that conversation, I don't know if there's a wrong answer, unless, of course, one of these guys gets hurt, but then you don't know that's coming anyways. Obviously, Saquon Barkley has the injury where he missed most of last season. Dalvin Cook's been banged up over the last couple of years, hasn't played a full 16 games. But I think that what you said there at the end of the question, how much volume, how much work Dalvin Cook gets with that Minnesota Vikings offense, even looking forward, I think the offensive line is trending upwards with the Minnesota Vikings. And I think that as long as Kirk Cousins is the quarterback there, it's going to be heavy play action. They're going to run the ball a lot to set up the passing game, even with Justin Jefferson coming into his own along with Adam Thielen. I think that I would go Dalvin Cook here. Obviously, the ceiling is really high for both of these guys, but I just feel like workload-wise and situation-wise, how they're just going to continually feed him. I think that Dalvin's the guy. I don't have as much faith in that Giants offense to get it done.
I was faced with this situation in our startup draft, and I chose Dalvin Cook at the 1-9 over Saquon Barkley. So I'm right in that same camp as you, because I think, yes, we know that Dalvin Cook has a lengthy injury history. You mentioned he's never played a 16-game season, but the production when he is on the field from his volume, his guaranteed volume, plus his work in the receiving game too. It's not like he's out here with just a Nick Chubb workload as far as a receiving back. Like, he gets plenty of targets to be able to sustain volume as well. The production is just, I think it's unparalleled in the NFL. Like, you do have the injury risk, but you have that now with Saquon Barkley, which I hope that we didn't, but the past 2 seasons, he hasn't played a full 16 games. So it's not, we might be seeing something here where there's a little bit more risk with Saquon Barkley here at the top of your draft. I wanted a little bit more of a sure thing, so I went Dalvin Cook. I'm right there with you. Let's go with the next one here. A.J. Brown is the wide receiver 2 in all of Dynasty rankings versus DK Metcalf at wide receiver 3, former teammates at Ole Miss. Yeah. Now one with the Tennessee Titans, one with the Seattle Seahawks. This was really tough for me, man. I want to hear where you're at.
I think that people believe that A.J. Brown is just naturally going to get more receptions than DK Metcalf is, because when you look at A.J. Brown's game, I'll say that it's more all around. Now, I don't say that in any way trying to take away what DK Metcalf does. He was my wide receiver 1 far and away when he was coming out in the NFL draft, because of the things that DK Metcalf does. He does them at a fully elite level. He is an unbelievable vertical threat and a receiver who can run any kind of stem towards the sideline. He's almost unstoppable in that way. A.J. Brown, he's a guy that you move around a little bit more. And I can see why people in fantasy would naturally gravitate towards that, because when you have more versatility in that area, when you create a little bit more separation, say in the middle of the field more than the sidelines, then it's almost just easier for you to convince yourself that the throws that are going his way are going to be caught and are going to go well. So I understand why people would be drafting A.J. Brown above DK Metcalf, but I'd still be going with DK Metcalf, especially because Russell Wilson's his quarterback. If it was a different situation in Seattle, say if Russell Wilson had really pitched a fit and wanted out of Seattle and he's no longer there, then I think things might be a little bit different. But Russell Wilson is such an unbelievable deep ball passer, and DK Metcalf is such an unbelievable deep ball receiver.
It's right.
And I think that that's just what it all boils down to. There's 2 extremely talented wide receivers, but I'm still taking DK Metcalf.
Does the concern of there's been some buzz about Russ potentially moving on next year? Because I think the end of his contract is this year. There's something there where he can get out. So does that come into play at all for you? Because we know that Tannehill is cemented as the starter for the Titans, for the next, I think, 3 or 4 years. Does that come into play at all for you? Or are you saying that'll work itself out? I'm really not that concerned. It's still DK Metcalf for me.
Yeah, his contract's not up, but they do have an out after this year. Like, his dead cap is $58 million this year. It's been $70 million before that. So it's like, you can't get rid of him. But next year it goes down to 26. Okay, if you really wanted to get rid of him, you can, but I don't think that they're going to. The thing that really holds me back from fully believing in Tannehill, not that I think that he's going to be a terrible quarterback, I just don't know what that offense is going to be like without Arthur Smith. He was truly the offensive coordinator that revived what Tannehill was able to do. We saw Tannehill and put him in the best position to succeed. I still think it's going to be good, but it ain't going to be Russ good. We've seen what Russ has been able to do, and Russ throughout his entire career has been better than Tannehill, even over the last couple of years. So I still got to go with Russell Wilson and DK Metcalf here.
You said the phrase earlier of splitting hairs, and I feel like that's what it's going to be for all these players that we talk about. And that's the same here for me. So I'm going to go with A.J. Brown here, but this is, the slightest of margins here with A.J. Brown versus DK Metcalf. I am letting that potential there with Russ leaving Seattle because, who knows what that quarterback situation is going to be like after this year if it isn't Russ. Because, again, you mentioned the perfect pairing there with Russ and his deep ball accuracy. We time and time again, that's talked about how he can just drop it in a bucket 40 yards downfield, and Metcalf fits that role perfectly. I just don't know. I don't know. Are they going to turn to more of a run-heavy offense without Russ if it is a Derek Carr type quarterback, someone like that? I just don't know. So I'm going to let that be the deciding factor there. I'm going to go with A.J. Brown there as that as the wide receiver I would favor. All right, let's go to some guys that one is 27 years old, one is 26, so age is really not factoring in here. Let's go to the next names on our list. That is Stefon Diggs as the wide receiver 6 in our ECR Dynasty rankings, and Calvin Ridley as the wide receiver 7. Stefon Diggs, ridiculous volume last year with Josh Allen.
Yeah.
Still plenty of room, only 27 years old, plenty of room for him to still continue to ascend. And then Calvin Ridley, now with this, he's the wide receiver 1 in this offense, unquestioned. Could be looking at a similar volume to what Stefon Diggs had last year in Buffalo. So which one of these guys are you selecting if you're up on the clock?
I'm going with Stefon Diggs, and I know that this is somewhat close. I don't think this is like a blowout. I'd take Stefon Diggs, but I really wouldn't have very many second thoughts. Stefon Diggs is one of, if not the best route runner in the game. He is so incredible at separation. Josh Allen and him have an incredible connection, as we saw last year. His catch percentage is consistently above 70%. Okay, his touchdowns might be down when it comes to fantasy points, but Brian Daboll is still there as the offensive coordinator. Things are clearly looking up for the Buffalo Bills. I don't think that regime is going to slow down. In fact, I think that last year was just the beginning of what's going to open up as their winning window. And with that being the case, it's all going to run through Stefon Diggs. That entire passing offense is going to go through Diggs, and that's the way that it's going to be. I know that Calvin Ridley is going to be tempting because Julio Jones now isn't there, but I've got a lot more faith in where that offense is going, both with the quarterback in Josh Allen and the offensive coordinator in Brian Daboll, than I do with whatever is going on currently in Atlanta. Now, I just gave praise to Arthur Smith, and Arthur Smith's now the head coach in Atlanta, so it all could maybe work out. I think that Ridley's going to put up a ton of stats, but I still got to take Stefon Diggs. He is the solidified guy that I got to take here.
I think I'm going that way too, and I'm going to let the offense be the deciding factor there for me, where this Buffalo offense was just unstoppable last year. Atlanta, I think, is going to take a year or two before we see them start to find their stride, if you will. So I will go with Stefon Diggs here as well as the wide receiver I would prefer. Let's go to the running back, and two players that I think very, very different trajectories coming into the NFL. One is a rookie, one is a second-year player. That's Najee Harris is running back 11, Antonio Gibson as RB12. Gibson with 33 career carries in college. Najee Harris, a lot more than that. And Gibson had a phenomenal rookie season as he adjusted to the running back position in a full-time role. I think the sky's the limit for what he can be in year 2 and moving forward. But this is a tough decision going from Najee Harris and what he put on tape at Alabama, now in the Pittsburgh Steelers offense, to Antonio Gibson. Which one are you going with here? Yeah,
I'm going to go with Najee Harris here. And it's a point that I'm going to make here that I think we're going to circle back to for a matchup later in this list that I took a peek at. And it really is the fact that they've got to run the football. The Pittsburgh Steelers have to. They cannot lean on Big Ben's arm the way that they have in the past. They saw that last year. And so they're going to be going to Najee Harris as much as they possibly can, both in the run game and I think in the pass game too. I think that he's got decent hands. I think McKissick is the better receiver of the two. And so if you're in like heavy PPR formats, you might want to lean Gibson just because you're hoping that he can become kind of this Alvin Kamara archetype where he's running the ball and he's also a big time threat, getting a lot of targets out of the backfield. That could certainly be the case, but I just see Najee Harris being a workhorse for them. They didn't draft him in the first round to, have him split time, or that he wouldn't be the guy to eventually be the bell cow of this team. I think that he is going to far and away have the carry load for the Pittsburgh Steelers. They're also going to get him involved in the passing game as much as they possibly can. And then when Big Ben hangs it up, whether it's at the end of this year or maybe the end of next year, it's going to be one of the two. That's only going to make his value even higher. He's only going to get the ball even more. And so with a team that loves to run the football anyways, they're going to certainly need it. And I think they're going to lean on Najee a lot. So I'm going to go with Najee Harris.
Man, I really want Antonio Gibson on my dynasty rosters because like I mentioned at the top, I think the sky is the limit for what he can be. But the safer bet is to go with Najee Harris, right? Just the previous history with his workload in college, we know what he is. Antonio Gibson was ridiculous with a limited workload last year, like 4.7 yards per carry, 11 touchdowns on the ground. That's fantastic. I think he can, hit 11 rushing touchdowns again this year. But that's ridiculous efficiency, and I just haven't seen it yet. So I'm going to go with Najee Harris here as that running back that I would prefer as well. Let's stay with the running back position here. One that I'm actually kind of shocked about, and I want to hear your thoughts here. Clyde Edwards-Helaire at RB15. Now, the potential here and the hype for CEH coming into the NFL last season was just ridiculous. Everyone wanted CEH on their dynasty rosters, and it's crazy now that he's down at RB15. I think it's just based on what we've seen. And then you got Joe Mixon here at RB16, only 24 years old still, has the contract, the huge contract under him. The injury history maybe plays a little role here, but I think he is a tremendous value in Dynasty Startup ADP. So let's go. CEH here at RB15, Joe Mixon, RB16. Which one are you going with?
I think these guys are both really great values, actually, when you look at them as RB15 and RB16. But if I had to choose between the two, I would take the one whose offense I have more faith in, and that is the Kansas City Chiefs. They're going to put up points, right? And anytime you're in an offense that gets in the red zone and scores as much as the Kansas City Chiefs do, if you're the RB1 on that team, you're going to have the chance to score a lot of points. And I think that that's what's going to be the case for Clyde Edwards-Helaire. Yeah, I think he had a little bit of a quiet year as a rookie, especially relative to expectations, but I'm going to be honest, I thought the expectations were pretty unfair of him. He had an incredible year with LSU when they won that national championship, and people just thought, oh, plug and play. Boom, there it is. There you go. He's going to be a 1,000-yard rusher, and it just doesn't work like that. And so him having a full year now as a pro under his belt, I think he's going to bounce back, and he's going to be the top back on that team. He's got the soft hands. He's smart in pass protection. He knows how to run the football well. I just think that he wasn't as confident last year with the first year of the Chiefs as he was in his final year with LSU. I think that changes a little bit this year. And man, when it comes to Joe Mixon, love his talent. I really think that Joe Mixon is one of the most talented backs in the league. You mentioned how young he is, but I don't have faith in where the Bengals are going. I just don't. That offensive line is still awful.
Sure.
I think Zach Taylor's probably going to be on his way out. Anytime you're changing head coaches, you never know what the future's going to hold. And so I've got more faith in the Kansas City Chiefs team around Edwards-Helaire, especially when you saw how much they upgraded their offensive line this year. I got more faith in that regime with Andy Reid at the top. And so I got to go with the Kansas City Chiefs, Clyde Edwards-Helaire. That's the safer pick here.
For me, this comes down to what I was just talking about with CEH with Najee Harris and Antonio Gibson. It's Gibson has the talent. CEH absolutely has the talent, but the issue is volume. Like, do we have that guarantee that CEH is going to be able to get enough of the work to be able to maximize that talent? I just don't. I don't know. Whereas with Joe Mixon, we know what type of workload he's going to get when he's healthy.
True.
And everyone wants to talk about the injury history with Mixon, and I think that's why he's down here at RB16. But he's also, he's played more games than Dalvin Cook in their NFL career. They both came in 2017. Mixon's played more games than Dalvin Cook. And we don't even, blink twice about Cook and his price tag all the way up at, what I mentioned, RB3. So I think with Mixon there, incredible value. I am going to let that be the deciding factor. I think it's close. I think that CEH absolutely can hit and can return top 5 value. And again, the offense is phenomenal, but I just don't have faith that he's going to get the type of workload that's necessary to return that. So I'll go Mixon here. Let's go back to the wide receiver position here. Let's go with Allen Robinson at wide receiver 13. Praise God, he finally has a quarterback for the first time in his NFL career. And then DJ Moore, wide receiver 14 here. Expectations for DJ Moore have been sky high over the past couple of years. I really like him this year. With the addition of Terrace Marshall on the outside, you got Robbie Anderson on the other side there on the perimeter. You kick DJ Moore into the slot. We know that Sam Darnold loves his slot receivers. So DJ Moore at wide receiver 14, Allen Robinson at wide receiver 13. Who are you choosing?
Oh man, these are two incredible wide receivers.
For context, really quick, DJ Moore is 24 years old, Allen Robinson 27.
I don't know how Allen Robinson's still 27. That blows my mind. I'm gonna go with DJ Moore. I think I like both of these options. You mentioned how Allen Robinson has the most talented quarterback that he's had in a long time there in Chicago, and you think Justin Fields and not Andy Dalton. I think that there's going to be better quarterback play there. And, Allen Robinson, he just another 1,000 yards last year with terrible quarterback play. It's just unbelievable what he is able to do. And so it feels weird betting against him. But when I look at DJ Moore's stats, he got a lot of workload last year. He averaged a ton of yards per reception. He had over 1,000 yards receiving. And he also had a catch percentage of 55%. I don't think that's going to happen again. So I think we're going to see more aggressive work from Joe Brady in the offense there in Carolina. I think you're going to see even more emphasis on DJ Moore, and I think you're going to see more consistency. I think the yards per reception might go down a little bit, but I think he's going to haul in more passes, and I think he's going to do plenty with them still. So I'm a big DJ Moore guy, and I'll go with DJ Moore here, even though these are two players that I think you can have a lot of faith in no matter where you're drafting them.
Very similar narratives with both of these guys. Like DJ Moore's history of quarterback play is not fantastic either. So now you're hoping that Sam Darnold can become that guy. And if he does, then we could absolutely be talking about DJ Moore as a top 8 dynasty wide receiver. Allen Robinson, he is still only 27 years old. I think that he can take a massive step forward, which is crazy to say, with Justin Fields as his quarterback. But you want to bet on the youth there. I'm not going to fault you for that at all. I think I'll go with Allen Robinson here just because I think that it's going to be so exciting to see what he can do now with Justin Fields. We've seen what he's done with Blake Bortles, Mike Glennon, I think, Mitchell Trubisky. Like, it's just a terrible list of quarterbacks that he's played with.
Right.
I want to see what he does with Justin Fields. I'm excited for that. Let's go wide receiver here. Let's go Brandon Aiyuk at wide receiver 20. Versus Diontae Johnson at wide receiver 21. Diontae Johnson, he's got Big Ben in his pocket. I mean, when Johnson is on the field and Big Ben's playing, he's seeing 10 plus targets. Like, lock it in. Brandon Aiyuk probably not going to see that same target volume, but this offense could take a massive step forward moving forward with Trey Lance at quarterback. So where are you going here? Brandon Aiyuk or Diontae Johnson?
What you just mentioned there with the Niners, especially with this being a Dynasty podcast, is why I have a lot of faith in him getting the nod over Diontae Johnson. I like Diontae. Clearly, like you said, him and Big Ben have a great connection, but I think that Big Ben's arm is only getting worse. I really do. I'm not so sure what the future holds for him, even in this 2021 season. And after Big Ben hangs it up, I don't know which direction they're going to go with wide receiver. I don't know which quarterback's going to step in. I don't know how reliable it's going to be that you can expect all these targets to Diontae Johnson. And so there's just so much unknown beyond this year with Johnson, whereas Aiyuk, I really do think that last year was the beginning of a great career for him. I think that the arrow is pointing up. They have Jimmy Garoppolo to start. They've got Trey Lance in the back pocket. Kyle Shanahan ain't going anywhere. That offensive line is great. They got a good run game. Brandon Aiyuk doesn't get all the attention of the defense because they have other wide receivers around him. And so I think that you can sometimes look at situations in the exact same way, just as a positive and a negative. Some people might look at San Francisco and say, Kyle Shanahan ain't afraid to spread it around. Like, they've got George Kittle, they have Deebo Samuel, they have a great running game. So where is Brandon Aiyuk's stats going to come from? And I say, okay, that's fine. I agree with that. But I also feel like an efficient offense produces big stats for a lot of guys. Right. And I think that Aiyuk is going to be in the game and in the game plan plenty to really be able to reap those rewards. And so I'm going to go with Brandon Aiyuk here. I think that his outlook, his future, even beyond this season, really goes up as Diontae Johnson's gets a lot more cloudy.
Yep, I'm going to agree with you here. I'm going to go Aiyuk. And Aiyuk was someone who I was completely torn on going back to when he was coming out. And for me, it was, I watched a couple of games of tape and I was like, I don't get it. I don't get the hype here with Aiyuk in the first round at all. And then I watched a couple other games. I came back to him like 3 months after I had watched him originally. I was like, okay, this feels like a completely different player. Like, I don't know if I just watched the wrong games to begin with, but I still was just like, I don't know. I don't know what to think about this player. You mentioned you didn't love him. I was kind of in that same boat where I had him down in my rankings. I thought that he was raw. I thought that he needed to develop quite a bit here. And I think that a year under his belt, we saw a lot of flashes in year one. And I think that, with this offense, you mentioned efficiency. It hasn't scared us off of drafting A.J. Brown as wide receiver too, right? In this Tennessee offense, has just been insanely efficient. I think San Francisco can do the same thing. And I think Diontae Johnson with Big Ben, the overall passing volume taking a step back in this offense, I think we could be talking about Diontae Johnson as a little bit lower than this in dynasty rankings come next year. I'll go Aiyuk here as well. Okay. All right, let's go with two running backs who actually I compared Javonte Williams, who is at running back 20, to David Montgomery in this pre-draft process as RB21. So Javonte Williams in Denver, David Montgomery in Chicago. A little bit of a crowded backfield with both of these guys. You've got some things to sift through here. Which one are you going with, Javonte Williams or David Montgomery?
This one was tough for me. This one was probably
really
the toughest one of the ones that you sent, because I think that right off the bat, right when I saw this, hey, Javonte Williams or David Montgomery, I immediately went, oh, Javonte Williams. Like, that's who I would want. And then, I looked some stats up from last year, and, stats from year to year, it's subjective, and it's certainly kind of like in its own little world. It's not that they translate too far, especially when you get into the rankings of like, oh, this guy was 5th in rushing this year. Sometimes those numbers would be, 11th in a different season. So I think the stats can be a little bit misleading, but David Montgomery, Chicago has shown that they're not afraid to give this guy the football. And if you want volume, he's going to be able to give it to you. He was 4th in attempts, 5th in total rushing yards. Am I going to sit here and say that a rookie who is still in a backfield with Melvin Gordon, and okay, so maybe he'll be the starter and he could be the guy moving forward, but I just named that David Montgomery was in the top 5 in the NFL in those categories. Do I just think that Javonte Williams is going to be a top 5 back in those categories? It's hard for me to fully predict that. So, like I said, right off the top, I thought Javonte Williams. I think that Javonte Williams is more talented than David Montgomery. I don't mean that to be a big slight, but look, if you just need if you're drafted a running back around RB20 anyways, hopefully you have another running back on your roster, one. Right. And so like maybe he's your RB2 and your RB3 and you just want a lot of volume there. Like if you say like, hey, I just want consistent points from this next running back, then I'd tell you to take David Montgomery, because over the last couple of years, they've shown they're going to give this dude the ball, even though it's not flashy.
Yeah, I think it goes into a philosophy of how the first few rounds of your startup draft went.
Right, correct.
If you have a young roster, if you took some shots on guys that are eventually going to develop, then I think I might go with the youth here with Javonte Williams at 21 years old versus Montgomery at 24. So Montgomery, though, if you are a contending roster, if you've got you're pushing all your chips in throughout the first few rounds, and you're going with a little bit of an older roster, you're ready to compete this year, I think Montgomery offers you that, because with Williams, we also don't have clarity on if he's even going to be the lead back on this roster. You might have to wait a year before we get Williams as the clear lead running back option over Melvin Gordon. So I think that's kind of the way that I'll phrase that. I kind of want Javonte Williams regardless over David Montgomery, just because Tariq Cohen
it's a sexier pick.
It is a sexier pick. It really is. We know what David Montgomery is. We don't know what Javonte Williams is just yet.
Right.
Could end up being that these guys are very, very similar. That's why they're priced here around the same range. But I think I'll go Williams there just as that tiebreaker. All right, let's go to the quarterback position here. Let's go Dak Prescott as the QB4 or Lamar Jackson at QB5. This one, incredibly difficult for me. I don't know where I land even still.
Yeah, because Lamar obviously gives you so much on the ground, but so does Dak. Like Dak gives you the ability to be a goal line touchdown guy. And because of that, I'm taking Dak Prescott here. Before he got hurt, Dak was on a legendary pace when it came to passing last season. I don't know the exact number in my head, but I think at one point it was either when he got hurt or the week before he got hurt, he was on pace for like 6,000 passing yards. Like he was on pace to break the single season passing record by over 1,000 yards. It was just unbelievable. And that just, I think, shows you, one, that Dallas offense, when he's back there clicking, and just two, how talented this guy is as a passer. And so I've got a lot of faith in where Dak Prescott's going. What I saw last year, if he comes back and he's 100%, we're hitting the ground running. Even, okay, maybe a little bit of a step back. Maybe it takes him a little bit more time to get back into it. But if we get the Dak Prescott that we saw last year, I guarantee that his arrow is, again, only going to go up. And because he also gives you that goal line rushing touchdown threat, I'm taking him over Lamar Jackson.
Dak Prescott, 27 years old, Lamar Jackson, 24. That doesn't play into it for me at all, especially at the quarterback position. We've got these guys, they're playing until they're 40 now and even beyond with Tom Brady. So I think with Dak, I am going to go with the safer play, and that is just the offense that he's got around him. He does also bring some touchdown upside, like you mentioned, at the running back as a rusher. around the goal line, like you mentioned, but we've got the safety net of the passing volume, the passing yardage, the receiving weapons around him. Lamar Jackson, for as great as he is as a runner, we haven't seen it yet as a passer. Now, they brought in Rashad Bateman. They've got Sammy Watkins. I think Devin Duvernay is going to take a step up as that slot receiver. Like, they've got some options here now around Lamar Jackson to help him as a passer, which I think can help him take a step forward, but that's just not a guarantee. And so I'm going to go with Dak Prescott here, who I feel a little bit safer with, but again, splitting hairs here. Let's go tight end position here to wrap it up. Let's go TJ Hockenson as the tight end 5 or Mark Andrews as the tight end 6.
Man.
TJ Hockenson, highly drafted as the number 8 overall pick. Mark Andrews has just exploded onto the scene even from his rookie season. So this is a really tough one, man. TJ Hockenson or Mark Andrews?
I think I'm going Mark Andrews. Because, when you look at what the Ravens were able to do in this past draft, they draft guys like Rashad Bateman. They have Tylan Wallace as well. And I love who those wide receivers are for this team and what they could be. But it's still, in order for them to maximize what Tylan Wallace is and what Rashad Bateman is, they would still have to change up what they're currently doing, which is a lot of deep routes to the sideline, a lot of deep stuff, and then over the middle stuff with their tight ends. And unless there is this big change in how they do their offense, Lamar's going to feed Mark Andrews. I mean, it's just, you're going to get so many touchdowns from him every single year because he's just going to be a consistent target for Lamar Jackson because it's clearly what he's the most comfortable with. And so I think I'm going with Mark Andrews because I know I have that right now. I know I have that, and I could bet on that connection with those two guys. TJ Hockenson, for as talented as he is and how there ain't nobody in Detroit who's taking targets away from TJ Hockenson right now. I don't know what the future is with Jared Goff. I don't know exactly how they're going to run this offense. Jared Goff has had some success throwing the ball to tight ends, but when you go back to his time with the Los Angeles Rams, but I don't know how long Goff's going to be there and then what guy is coming in after Goff. There's just more uncertainty with what's going on in Detroit right now. I think that they're going to upgrade at receiver next year and the year after. So it's not like Hawkinson's going to be the only show in town for years and years to come. So all that being said, give me the red zone threat of Mark Andrews. I think that's going to be the bigger payoff for you.
I think I'm going to go Mark Andrews here too. And I think it's going to be the state of the offense. It's going to be the tiebreaker there. Because I think that from TJ Hockenson, yes, he could see volume, but Jared Goff's coming off of 20 passing touchdowns last year with Sean McVay as his coach and Robert Woods and Cooper Kupp and Tyler Higbee, a loaded receiving core. And now he's going to Tyrell Williams, Rashad Bateman, Amon-Ra St. Brown, and TJ Hockenson, DeAndre Swift, Jamal. How is he going to surpass 20 passing touchdowns? He did that with the loaded receiving core that he had. I don't know if he hits even that mark this year with this offense. So I think that if you do draft TJ Hockenson, I think you're going to have to be prepared to watch Mark Andrews outperform him this year. And from a dynasty standpoint, with Mark Andrews, if he does hit and return immediate value, I'm able to sell him. I'm able to sell him for peak value.
Yeah, that's a good point too.
Waiting for TJ Hockenson for the situation around it, for them to draft a quarterback with the first or second overall pick in the 2022 NFL draft. I might have to wait for that to then for him to, then I've got to wait for a rookie quarterback to come up to speed. And there's a ton there that if I do draft TJ Hockenson over Mark Andrews, I'm having to play the waiting game. And that's going to be tough for me to watch Mark Andrews, who I had to make that decision over, to watch Andrews return value right away versus waiting for it for Hockenson. So that's going to be the tiebreaker there for me.
Yep, I agree.
All right, that is going to do it. We had 18 names, or 18 lists, numbers here to be able to go through, and we got through 10 of them. So
that's good.
We talk
more than we thought.
We talk a lot more than we probably should. But hey, this is our podcast. We can do what we want.
Context.
Thank you so much.
People want the context, Kyle.
Thank you so much to Reality Sports Online for sponsoring today's podcast. Head over to realitysportsonline.com to learn more about what they've got going on. Trevor, next week, we kick into our look at the 2022 class. So we are going to be taking a deep dive into the quarterbacks, the running backs, the wide receivers, the tight ends in this upcoming class, giving you our overall thoughts on the strengths, the weaknesses of the classes, so you can be prepared to potentially trade some of those 2022 draft picks. I know I've gotten a lot of questions about that already. Can I send away a 2022 first? What's the strength of it? And I've just said, wait. We're going to get to it on the podcast. Yep. You guys want to be here to be able to find out what we think about these upcoming prospects. It's going to be a ton of fun. For Trevor Sikkema, I'm Kyle Yates, and we'll see you next time. Looking for useful content, fantasy relevant information, and the data that can help your team win? Then make sure to subscribe to the FantasyPros YouTube channel. And while you're at it, follow us on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook at FantasyPros so we can help you dominate your league all season long.